All right, hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Explain Like I Am Five. I am Susan. I am your host of this mildly slapdash show. Most of the time, most of the time it's at least somewhat prepared. But I am only on my second cup of coffee today, and it's noon here. So today I am joined by the incomparable Chrissy Stroop. How are you doing on this wonderful Saturday?
Incomparable, huh? Well, that's one way to
Yes.
describe me, I guess. Thanks. I'm doing fine, I suppose. For COVID and election season and all of that.
Yeah, everything is, a dumpster fire.
But other than that, life is great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I try to look on the bright side sometimes, and then I remember the state of the world. And then it's like, well, shit.
Yeah,
Try to stay upbeat.
I just so happened to have rewatched Monty Python's Life of Brian with my roommate Megan, who is also my best friend, the other night, and she had never seen it. She loved it, and yeah, I mean, I think there's something to this whole idea of just laughing in the face of absurdity and adversity, and I love the way that it ends with all these dudes on crosses singing "Always look on the bright side of life."
I love Monty Python. I am surprised that you and I just so everybody knows, in the pre-show stuff, our conversation went from like tattoos and Tom Petty and marching band and like politics and stuff, and it was like it was just so
it's all connected.
I am surprised we have not had a discussion on Monty Python, but then I'm not surprised about it.
I have to say, I was never in marching band myself. I did play trumpet starting in fifth grade band.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think I would have stuck with it. I wasn't the best about practice. Like, I wasn't super interested in practicing. But all my friends were also the nerds at my Christian school who were also in the band. So if my dad hadn't taken a job at a church plant, as they call it, which is like a startup church with seed money from a major church organization. So this was the missionary church, and moved us to Colorado Springs, like literally the year after Focus on the Family moved there, and it was like becoming this evangelical thing.
Oh my gosh.
So he moved out there to take a job at a church plant that was like, mega church inspired and make church a rock show, and, call the bulletin a program, say things like it's not your grandma's church, and, get people in there and then sell them the same crap politics. But I have to say, my dad has evolved a lot since that time.
That's awesome.
He also drove a like rust orange red-ish Pinto with no air conditioning in those years, and sometimes listened to Rush Limbaugh in it. Anyway, he works at an LGBTQ affirming ELCA church now. That's it has the word evangelical in it, but it's actually mainline Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. They're like the good Lutherans, the more inclusive Lutherans, So he ended up there. But yeah, I mean, I ran an old analog light board at that church. I was always having to volunteer for stuff, quote unquote volunteer. But anyway,
voluntold, basically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're expected to be involved in the church if your dad is one of the staff pastors. But yeah, so I ended up then moving in the middle of my sixth grade year, right? So I'm in this new school. I didn't know anybody. And I was in the public school. I think I would have also probably stayed in the band if I'd stayed at this, I think it was, Timberview Middle School in Colorado Springs, which was a great public school. And at first I was a fish out of water, having been a Christian school kid. And my mom would like to remind me later, that I complained about it every day, because later I'm like, why did you then make me go to the Christian school again, after just half a semester, or a semester, one semester, half a year in this public school? I wanted to stay. I had a few friends by that point, and she would always be like, you complained about it every day. I was like, well, yeah, because you uprooted me in the middle of my sixth grade year.
Yeah.
But anyway, so finally I ended up in Colorado Springs Christian Middle School, which was even more fundamentalist than Heritage Christian School, the one that I went to in Indianapolis, where my mom then also had become a teacher, and they always have the expectation in these schools that teachers, faculty, and staff send their kids to these schools. And I was never going to be the kind of kid who would get out by getting expelled, which is really the only way you can do it if you're a teacher's kid. So they forced me to go back there. My mom was like, look, even if I wanted to let you stay in the public school, this school is demanding that you enroll here. So I don't know. I just never connected with the people in the middle school band there. I didn't like the band director. And so I had no motivation to practice, and I just dropped the trumpet. And so that was like a really long way to tell that story. But
well, no, I mean, and that sort of goes to show like the importance of teachers and their influence and stuff. Like if you have a teacher that does not, at the very least, sort of, at the very least, if it's not somebody that you even sort of just can stand, like that you like, then it's like, I have zero motivation to do anything for you. And of course, I had, and obviously I still do, ADHD as a kid. So if something didn't interest me, I was just all like, yeah, I'm just not going to do it.
And yeah, the band director back in Indianapolis, I mean, she was very strict. She was this very large, sort of butch lady, and I mean, I could speculate about a number of things related. She never married, let's put it that way. A Christian school teacher, and she wasn't like the most likable person in the school, but she was a known quantity, and so are like all my friends in the band there. And then in Colorado Springs, we had a very charismatic band director. I liked him. His name was literally Mr. Singmaster, which was just so funny. I mean, obviously he should have been a choir director, but
that's the best.
But I don't even remember the name of the one that I was the one that we had when I was in 7th grade in Colorado Springs Christian School. She just, I don't know, I didn't connect with her. I didn't connect with the kids in the band, and I never got back to band.
Yeah, it's I feel that on a very, very deep level, because there's a lot of stuff that I was just like, don't really want to be here, so I'm not going to be here anymore. That's sort of eventually would lead to conversion from Christianity, is,
So, some of these things, actually contributed, because, then with that church plant in Colorado Springs, my dad, he ended up kind of being put in an awkward situation by the senior pastor, just sort of, going on power trips, being domineering, threatening his job security, refusing to submit to an elder board. And just one of these pastor things. I mean, when you're a kid in this environment, you see how the sausage is made. And so he and the youth pastor, who was also from Indiana, they moved their families back to Indiana. And so then I graduated from the same high school that I'd gone to elementary school at, Heritage Christian School in Indianapolis, which was founded in 1965. And heritage means everything you think it means. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah.
So I mean, I mostly grew up in Indiana with that little stint in Colorado Springs. They started a new church plant under the same umbrella organization, the Missionary Church, but it failed to get to become self-funded in time. And then he and that youth pastor, who then was the senior pastor of the new church plant, they stopped being friends. We stopped being friends with their family,
It's amazing how stuff can, you associate with people, not necessarily because it's not out of desire, but it's more out of proximity.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that we liked each other, but also I think that there was some bad blood because of the church plant failing.
Yeah.
That's really what it was about. Yeah. And I didn't actually come on to the show where you're not really supposed to talk about religion and atheism to talk about religion, but here we are.
But it's at this point, it's sort of wherever it leads, I'm okay. But I am going to steer it in the direction of, so I am assuming, since you and I had discussed stuff related to fall and like comfort food and stuff, are you fairly open about your location and stuff?
Yeah, and I was going to ask you too. Like, I don't know, are you from Portland, or did you also move here at some point?
So I moved here. We only moved here. Nathaniel and I moved here in March. So the day that we moved here from Texas, which because we couldn't live in Austin, we figure let's live in Portland instead because there's better weather.
So you mean this last March?
Yes.
Okay, so I've actually lived here like 9 months, 10 months longer than you have. Interesting.
Oh my god. So we're both fairly recent transplants. I love it so much. Oh my gosh. How have you and I not talked more before? Oh my god.
It's really strange. And yeah, I mean, in terms of openness about my location, yeah, I'm fine with telling people I'm in the outer Buckman neighborhood, close to this stretch of Southeast Hawthorne where there's, lots of fun stuff, but the side streets are very suburban looking. There's a lot of Portland neighborhoods like that, obviously, but there are a lot of boutiques. There's a cool little hat shop. Lots of great cafes and restaurants as well. And I mean, one of the attractions to Portland to me, I moved here basically to get to a safe place to pursue medical gender transition. But I had, been wanting to visit the Pacific Northwest for a long time before I first did in 2017. At that time, I was working at the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida. I spent 3 years there as a postdoc and a visiting instructor. And then I ended up leaving academia, moved back to Indiana in with mom and dad for a year to try to see if I could really make the freelance writer thing work. And it's working so far, thanks only though to support from Patreon patrons. So thank you all so much. And if you're listening to this, hey, maybe please support my Patreon. I would not be able to do this kind of work full time without it. My writing and going on podcasts and that sort of thing. But yeah, so I visited Portland in 2017. I'd made some online friends in like ex-evangelical spaces. And one of them, Tori Douglas, let me stay with her and we hung out and had fun. And back then in spring 2017. Yeah, she was really cool. And I also reconnected with, weirdly, the pastor's daughter from the first church my family ever attended when I was like tiny, and we left when I was like 4.5, but I do have vague memories of her, and she's just a little bit older than me. So she found me online at a certain point through my ex-evangelical commentary and stuff, and messaged me, and she's like, I think, this is a weird question, but are you from Bluffton, Indiana? It was just like this town that no one's ever heard of, that even like a lot of Hoosiers who aren't from like that corner of the state have never heard of. But
that's so funny.
I was like, wait, are you Jana? And then I said her last name, and it's like, because I vaguely remembered her. She vaguely remembered me. So we also hung out, hiked Multnomah Falls before they burned. So, that was cool. And so that kind of cemented that this was the place that I wanted to move. I thought it was like the thing that I had in my mind about it. It pretty much matched the reality when I got there. The quirkiness, the openness, and it has faults like white liberal sort of faults, like we don't solve the homeless crisis here at all, and but I like Portland, and one of the reasons though I like Portland is for the food. It's weird because like when you think of the Pacific Northwest, you don't necessarily think of it as a food destination, or like there's not like a Pacific Northwest cuisine, right? Like yes, there's some really good salmon and dairy up here, but I don't think we think of like Pacific Northwest cuisine. But at the same time, Portland is I think one of America's great food destinations, largely because a lot of people who want to escape from other places come here and open restaurants, and also immigrants open great restaurants, and food trucks, and there's just such a fun food truck culture here,
Oh, yeah. And we walked by some. We went down. This was a few months ago. We had gone downtown, and I think they were all closed because pandemic. But I think it's at Pioneer Square. I think is where we were. Like there were a bunch of food trucks that were closed, but I was just all like, I forget that there was food trucks here. And having lived in Austin, I was just all like, oh my God, food trucks. I'm so excited.
Some of them are reopened now. Like my roommate and I were over like in the Richmond neighborhood the other day, taking her dog to the vet, and there's like just tucked away. There's all these like hidden gems in Portland. Like you have to go down an alley, and then there are several food trucks. So one of them is open, and it's just this fantastic poke place that also has like great musubis and and different, like they'll do bowls or burritos, and just really good. So yeah, and I'm totally forgetting the name of it, but so sorry, people out there. But yeah, no, I don't know. Food is definitely one of the things that like I do for self-care, and so it was very hard for me in the pandemic when you couldn't go to restaurants at all. I also like cooking. I think it's just really fun, but it's not a lot of fun to do it just for yourself. But like now that I have this roommate who is also my best friend who moved here from Florida, and she was able to get a job and do that, and she's an ex-evangelical as well. We generally like split the grocery shopping, and we have just like this division of labor around the apartment. And I'm happy to do most of the cooking and basically be in charge of the kitchen. I cook, and I clean the kitchen because I love the kitchen. Like the kitchen is just a nice place for me. She likes to bake more, and I'm not so much a baker because I enjoy how like imprecise and creative and like in the moment you can be with cooking. And I mean, of course I can like develop a recipe over time and then replicate the same recipe. But I tend to tinker with my recipes. Like, for years, I'll cook like the same thing, but I'll try like little different variations on it. Or, sometimes they do turn out better than others. I mean, I'm not like a brilliant chef, but I know some things, and it's a fun hobby. And fall is like a great food time in my view. I mean, traditionally it's always like the harvest and that sort of thing, but the weather also starts to get cool in a temperate climate or a northern state. And I guess we're more like, we're temperate here, even though it's milder than like, places where you have a really harsh winter, because we have that coastal influence. But the weather starts to change, the leaves starts to change. It's a great time to make like hearty soups and that sort of thing, or to go get soup. And there's this fantastic French little cafe on Southeast Hawthorne called Frog and Snail. It used to be called something else. I'm forgetting exactly what it was called. The name was in French before. So they just recently rebranded, but it is under the same management. Very simple little menu, $5 cocktails. And it's closed on Tuesdays, but otherwise, yeah. And they have fantastic French onion soup. And I mean, most of their menu is crepes, but also anything that they make with their potatoes au gratin. It's just wonderful. And what I love about Portland is like, yeah, you have all these sort of like famous food places that like even tourists know about and everyone knows about, but you also have a lot of like hidden gems and just like community places. And this is a place that like people who live near that stretch of Southeast Hawthorne, like it'd be like Southeast Hawthorne and 30 something, know these kinds of spots. And I don't think it's really known citywide based on my conversations with people, but it's just a wonderful little cafe, the Frog and Snail.
Oh, no, I want to try that. I'm actually going to make sure. I'm going to text Nathaniel really quick.
Yeah, what neighborhood are you in, if that's a thing that you say publicly?
We're in West Lynn. So we are sort of not like, sort of outskirty West Lynn, sort of a little bit. Because we're not like, it's not like the super, super fancy part of West Lynn. I'm trying to think of what it is in relation to other stuff. I use GPS to get everywhere, and I work I work sort of near Tannisport, just off of Barnes. So like I'm home and I'm at work, and it's like that's all I've really gone.
Yeah. I kind of try to develop a mental map eventually, but I do depend on GPS a lot myself. And if I'm not oriented in a space like very well, just from having moved around in that space a lot, I have a terrible sense of direction.
Oh, same. Same. And funnily enough, Nathaniel's here. PDX represent. Nathaniel will say the same thing. Oh yeah, we're southeast side of town, not far from Lake Oswego. So we're sort of I went to the Lake Oswego Safeway a few weeks ago, and I had on, so one of my favorite bands is a band called Drive By Truckers, and they're very, very like politically active and stuff, and they have a shirt that specifically says on it, very, very large print, says Black Lives Matter. Wearing a shirt that says Black Lives Matter on it in Lake Oswego is interesting. Needless to say, I got some interesting looks wearing that shirt in Lake Oswego.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, most of America doesn't really consist of blue states and red states. It consists of blue cities, surrounded by red space that is much less densely populated.
Yeah. And that's
I mean,
definitely the case here.
Maybe there are some exceptions. I mean, maybe Connecticut and Massachusetts are like truly blue states for the most part, but Oregon's not. But Oregon's politics are dominated by the small, the dense urban population that lives in places like Portland and Salem and Eugene. And basically, I mean, most of the population is concentrated in the Willamette River Valley, right? The whole rest of the state is not very densely populated, but it is kind of, how do I say this somewhat politely? It's full of
You don't have to be polite. It's fine.
Okay.
This is not necessarily a polite channel. Yeah. So I've been. You're saying like you really, really like you love to cook, and I'm always so jealous of people that like to cook, because the extent of my repertoire is like, I can boil pasta and dump sauce in it and like microwave some meatballs and stick those in there, which is what we had for dinner like 3 nights ago. And then macaroni and cheese. I don't cook very much. So what would you say at the moment? What is something that you're like working on and tinkering with? What's your favorite thing to cook right now?
Okay, well, first let me say, like Kraft macaroni and cheese or Trader Joe's frozen macaroni and cheese they're like both great comfort food, easy versions of that I will sometimes eat too. There's a nostalgia to it. I mean, my roommate and I recently kind of decided to just like explore like food from the 80s, which she doesn't remember because she's younger than me. So she was born in 1992. I was born about a decade before that. So, and we met as adults, but she had never tried rice-a-roni, so we got some. Yeah.
Oh my God, I grew up on rice-a-roni. I'm like right in between y'all because I was born January 87. So I'm like right smack dab in between y'all.
Yeah, I'm a 1980 baby. I'm technically like just right on the cusp of millennial versus Gen X, and it's a little bit weird. Like I definitely feel like Zennial is a thing, or Generation Oregon Trail, right? Because we were like, early adopters in our schools. At least if you went to like a wealthier school district or something, of this kind of like computer technology, Apple computers in the classroom, and everyone played Oregon Trail, right? Speaking of Oregon, to teach them about American history, although in this very problematic way.
Yeah, all it was dying of dysentery tinged with some,
which given is fun, but like the game does not teach you that Oregon was founded as a white supremacist enclave that barred people of color from settling here.
Exactly, and it was like still part of the like they tried to erase that part of the Constitution, apparently.
Yeah, like it's all the game too is just kind of like celebrating this heroic pioneer narrative and not talking about genocide, and obviously, but
of course.
But yeah, it's like the rice-a-roni of computer games. I mean,
It really, oh my God, that is the best way to describe that.
You still have this nostalgia for it if you're from this like micro generation. But so yeah, we did rice-a-roni, we did hamburger helper with organic hamburger from Trader Joe's, though, because I have standards. But no, but yes, I do like to cook. So one of the things that I've been messing with a lot lately, probably I've been making it about once a month, is braised chicken thighs in white wine, and you you use onions. Well, more often I actually like to use shallots. They're a little bit sweeter and nuttier with this recipe rather than red onions or white onions or Vidalia onions, and garlic. And you kind of saute that stuff, and put the chicken thighs in this Dutch oven on a stove, which you then slow braise, for about 45 minutes, and you make sort of a sauce out of the liquid that's left in there. Serve it over pasta, and I generally like pop some. At the very last minute, I'll put like some cherry or grape tomatoes in there, so they get heated up, but they don't really get cooked. And then serve that over pasta with this kind of like white wine cream sauce that you whip up after you finish braising the chicken thighs. Two important things about braising. You have to for chicken thighs, and I like the dark meat because it has that more fat and that richer flavor. You gotta be very serious about searing the skin for longer than you probably think you should. Like on about medium-high heat or so. Just turn those chicken thighs over and sear that skin for about 7 or 8 minutes. You want to render all the fat, and then if you want the skin to stay crisp while you have this delicious moist chicken on the inside that's also very flavorful with the way that you're cooking it, you want to make sure that you then don't cover the top with the liquid as well. It's just a little bit of liquid in the bottom of the pan, and it's simmered. And so yeah, that's what I've been working on.
It sounds really, really good right now.
Thanks.
I'm just like, I've only had coffee so far today, so I'm just like, ooh, I'm getting more and more hungry, and I think today's my grocery shopping day, so I might try and futz with something like that. That's gonna be really,
I can send you the basic recipe, and I'm still just always like tinkering around the margins of it, but yeah.
That's amazing, and I love it. Oh my gosh. So I'm oddly excited about it now. I don't usually get very excited about like cooking and stuff because, like I said, I don't have a ton of stuff in my repertoire. So I'm usually just like, oh, I mean, I guess I can make this, or we'll do frozen pizza, or just something that's it's a lot of the very, very basic stuff. And when you eat the same stuff over and over, you get really, really burnt out on it.
Yeah. I mean, cooking, it's not as hard as people think it is, because it is kind of about mastering just individual particular techniques. Many of them are quite simple, and then putting them together in different combinations. So also thinking about your flavors, your flavor profile, your marinades or whatever, or in this case, what kind of wine am I going to use? And I've pretty much settled on using a Spanish Verdejo Viura mix, which is a kind of earthy white wine. And I think it works really well for this. And, once you finish searing your skin on your chicken thighs, you take them out, and then that's when you saute your shallots and garlic, and I might also throw red peppers in there. And, then you end up pouring in your wine, you put the chicken back in there, and just, let it slow cook for about 45 minutes. And then you take some of that liquid, like I said, and you add some cream or some cornstarch, or maybe some milk and cornstarch, if you don't have cream, but cornstarch will thicken it up, and, just whisk it into a little sauce. Add some salt and pepper. Yeah. Oh, I usually do throw in basil as well. Throw in some fresh basil, and just let the leaves get all withered and just pull them out later, because I want the flavor to infuse. But yeah, so that you learn different things that you can do in certain contexts, and then you put them together in different ways. That's really all it is.
Nice. I like it.
I mean, you can braise chicken with so many different liquids, and you can also braise lamb. And I mean, so you learn the basic techniques, and then you learn how they work with different things. And yeah,
like how different meats will sort of, because I mean, I can't really think of, other than maybe some of the exotic stuff that that you might find, that it might be all like, oh well, I'm gonna try, like, I don't know, I can't think of anything exotic that I haven't really thought about, I mean, what sort of exotic shit do they even sell, like, at Safeway anyway? I don't even think they really sell anything exotic.
They have dragon fruit, which I still have no idea what to do with. It looks cool.
It does look cool. It really does look cool. So in terms of like somebody like me who, you know, maybe other than the you know, what I would love for you to send me. Do you have any recommendations in terms of like, because I'm sort of intimidated by, you know, the idea of cooking, because sometimes it seems a little bit overwhelming. Do you have any tips for in terms of like how to make it not be so sort of intimidating?
You know, maybe just start with basic, simple things and master basic techniques. There are so many websites that will break it down for you and teach you how to do a certain thing. So try a simple recipe, you know, and see if you like it and sort of build on that. A lot of recipes that are very good don't have many ingredients in them. I mean, you can look up like, you know, 5-ingredient recipes, for example.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the equipment does matter too, and you know, you can spend a lot of money if you really want to get into it. But there are also just a lot of basic things you can do in a skillet.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. Ooh, that's yeah. I'm gonna have to like. I think the rest of my day is probably going to be spent on like Googling recipes and trying to figure out and like potential like meal planning for the rest of the week. Just like to make it easier. Like I feel like so
there are a lot of side dishes that you could make that you might not think about that are just very easy. So, you know, let's say that, you know, you're gonna just cook up some chicken tenders or something. You already have that part down. What are you gonna serve it with? Well, why not pick up some asparagus? And asparagus is just very simple to saute. The whole secret is just don't do it too long, you know, and don't try to make it too fancy. So throw it in your skillet with some olive oil or whatever. Make sure to sear it well and turn it a few times so, you know, you're getting a little bit blackened on the sides. But take it out of there before it gets soft and mushy. And while it's in there, you know, spritz some lemon juice over it. Put on some salt and pepper. It doesn't need more than that. As long as you serve it well, it's like hot and maybe just slightly softened on the outside, but it's still going to crunch in the middle. There you go. It's a perfectly easy side dish.
Yeah, and I think my family. So we grew up. I mean, I think the reason that I am kind of intimidated by stuff is because we did a lot of the same stuff over and over. Like we did a lot of baked chicken, like my dad would buy, you know, the hindquarters, you know, in bulk, just to basically like cut them apart and you know, just throw some chicken in the oven for an hour.
Oh my God! Do you remember those old shake and bake commercials? It's not fried chicken; it's shake and bake. And hail! Sorry.
Oh my God! I have not thought about that in like ages.
Oh and God, and like a walking encyclopedia of 80s commercials.
Well, and then we were talking about rice-a-roni. Like now I've got the rice-a-roni. The San Francisco
simmer. Yeah.
Now that's stuck in my head. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry about that.
Oh my God, I love it. But yeah, with my family, we didn't really do a whole lot in terms of anything that was, you know, that broadened my culinary horizons, as it were. That makes it sound like I'm a lot fancier than I actually am. But we did a lot of baked chicken. Like we had a little little charcoal grill that we would you know, do like sometimes burgers, sometimes we'd grill the chicken. Sometimes if we were super fancy, we would grill the hot dogs.
Would that be your dad who was in charge of the grill?
Yes, but my dad also did most of the cooking because my mom had like a full-time job and then went to school in the evening, so we basically had to like have stuff ready for her whenever she got home.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. He was
I
he
mean,
was like self-employed and stuff. So he was
mhm.
able to do like he did all the band related stuff when I was a kid, and he was like Girl Scout cookie mom for ages
Oh,
cuz
nice.
like all every he was the one that everybody was like, "Do we need something done? Okay, we're going to get John to do it." So it's like
I love Girl Scout cookies. And yeah, this last Girl Scout season, I was walking down Southeast Hawthorne, and here was this mom and this girl just pulling a wagon down Southeast Hawthorne itself, down a commercial stretch of it. And I thought, now that's some entrepreneurial spirit, and bought a couple boxes.
that's smart. That is really smart. And I imagine, so I really genuinely wonder, are the Girl Scouts up here allowed to set up outside the dispensaries?
Oh, that would be such a good idea.
That would be.
I could.
Like, I feel like that ran across my mind a little while back, and I
Mhm.
was like, oh my God, the Girl
Mhm.
Scouts would like kill outside these dispensaries.
They
This is
would clean
amazing.
up on like all those
Yes.
people with the munchies. Yeah.
Yes. Like people who are like, buying everything ahead of time, like getting themselves prepared. Got
Mhm,
those got
mhm.
those proactive people who are
Yeah,
ready, rare to go.
yeah,
Um,
on that particular stretch of Hawthorne where I
mhm.
ran into this girl, I don't think there are any dispensaries too close by, but I do think like 6 or 7 blocks, toward downtown rather than away from it, there's definitely one down that way, yeah.
That would be
She could have.
smart.
I think she was going that way. I wonder if she walked down that far.
And then you sort of like, on one hand, you think, would the parents allow them to do that? But then at the same time, you sort of remember, A, it's the Girl Scouts and not the Boy Scouts, so, they're far better about
They're
things.
liberal-ish. Yeah.
Ish. But this is also Portland, so maybe I feel like the dispensaries and pot and stuff is like one thing that white liberals are like, all right, we'll be cool about this. It's like the one thing that they're like, all right, it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I was growing up, we didn't do a lot, like in terms
Mm,
of
mhm.
what we made every night and stuff like that. There wasn't a lot of variety. So the extent of my experience specifically with asparagus actually was, I'm fairly certain that we would have it at my grandmother's house. And she also would do like the like yellow squash and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
my experiences with these vegetables is most of the time they were very mushy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of just like, let's just say it, like, white bread families in the South and the Midwest that overcook their vegetables. And I think it might be more of a generational thing as well. And we also had, on Christmas Eve, when as a small kid, we used to go to my great grandparents' house.
Mhm.
My great grandma would make a casserole with asparagus in it. For years, I thought I didn't like asparagus because it was so soft and mushy in this casserole. And it was kind of okay in the context of the casserole with all the cheese and whatever else was in there. But
Mhm.
just the texture is, and plus, I mean, there's also the whole like health argument that you're cooking out all the vitamins, but who cares? The texture is just terrible, you know.
Yeah. Like, and to
Uh,
this day, I can't eat, like, yellow squash as a result because it was like, it had a little bit of of still some crispness in the ring around it, and then everything it was bad. Oh, it was bad.
yeah, I don't know why people did that. I mean, maybe because they didn't have good teeth left, or maybe any teeth. But
I mean, even as an atheist, I will say for my grandmother, God rest her soul, she was a wonderful, like, firecracker of a woman. I got a lot. I am who I am a lot because of her, but like, she was not a great cook.
I know both my great grandma and my great grandpa had dentures by the time we were doing these Christmas Eve things. But I mean, I think that's just the way that they cook these things and they learn to cook these things. Well, my great grandpa didn't really cook, but my great grandma though, she did make some really good stuff. I mean, she would also make that Buckeye candy that people make at Christmas. You know what I'm talking about?
Vague, I've heard it, but I don't know exactly what it is.
So it's like a sweet peanut butter mix. Covered in chocolate, and so it looks like a Buckeye from a Buckeye tree, if you know what I'm talking about. Like those nuts that are like dark brown for like all around, and they're light brown in the center.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of them in the Midwest, but there are some right here in Portland that I've just run across. But Ohio is called the Buckeye State. That's what a Buckeye is.
Yeah, yeah. See, I know, or I'm pretty sure I already knew like what a Buckeye proper was, just not in the candy I think I did.
Yeah, so it's a very popular in some parts of the country anyway. I would say old-fashioned at this point, sort of Christmas confection, but they're really good. And we would make those sorts of things and sugar cookies near Christmas Eve. The kids would help my great grandma, and we just called her grandma. We called my grandparents on that side, my mom's side, Mimi and Papa. So yeah, but in my family now, my parents both worked, and by the time I came along, I think, or well, maybe not immediately, but at some point in my childhood, my grandparents were both working too. My grandma had gone back to school and become a 4th grade teacher, but still, the women in the family were doing the vast majority of the cooking. But the grill was the province of, the patriarch of the household. So I think that's a dynamic that one sees a lot in Midwestern families. And my dad, though, he also liked to bake, and he liked to make popcorn, and he liked to make monkey bread. So he would do some of that kind of stuff. But, my mom was the one who was being relied on to provide most of the basic meals.
Oh yeah,
Dad provided the chocolate chip cookies and the fancy popcorn and the grilled stuff.
I do have very distinct memories of making chocolate chip cookies, specifically with my dad. Like because we used the recipe on the Toll House chocolate chips bag, of course, and I remember making those just so many of them at a time. So we just had chocolate chip cookies for ages. We'd make them every once in a while, and now I'm just like, I think I still, whenever because I don't really bake. I used to bake, cakes and cupcakes and stuff when I was in my early 20s, but I never really tried cookies because I think it was a little bit like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make them like as well as we made them when I was a kid. And then it's sort of like, I mean, we were going off of a recipe, so I probably could.
which recipe was it? Do you know? Is it a family recipe? Or honestly, in my family, my dad typically just used the Nestle Toll House recipe.
Yeah, that's exactly what they used. And I don't know if he like did extra stuff. The closest thing I've found, and they don't have it up here because it's an Austin-based thing, but the closest thing I found was Tiff's Treats, which I think is sort of like Crumble, where they deliver the cookies to you warm and stuff. It was the closest thing I found to that. But then again, you sort of have to feel like you're also looking at it through the nostalgia lens. Like, it's this integral part of my childhood.
Right. Can you recreate it? And that's a fair question. Oh, by the way, I got a text from my roommate who says that the poke food truck that I was talking about is called Let's Roll PDX Division, and it's at, for those who might want to try it, 3636 Southeast Division Street.
Okay, I'm gonna put that in my browser over here so I can find that later. 3636 division. Boop. Oh yeah, sweet. I'm very
Yeah,
excited.
there's like this little food truck park that's tucked down an alley, and you wouldn't know it's there unless you just like stumbled on it, as we did one day, because everything else was like closed. There were like in that area, there's like all these Italian restaurants that don't open for lunch, and there was like nothing to eat. And so we wandered down this alley, and boom, wonderful food truck.
It's all like, yes! Oh my gosh. It's like the best accidental discovery. Like when it has to do with food, it's just all like, this is the greatest thing ever. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love it so much. So we are coming up on, I mean, it's in what, like a little over a month. And when we were initially sort of talking about what what we would discuss today, you mentioned about Thanksgiving food. And I
Yeah,
want to hear all about this right now.
sure. Well, so I first started cooking Thanksgiving turkeys when I was studying abroad in Germany as an undergraduate. And so I was, using these phone cards as you did back then to make these like desperate international calls to my mom, like, Mom, how do I cook a turkey? Because I was going to be part of like an international Thanksgiving dinner where Americans were doing most of it to kind of show Europeans and other people from different places. Like we had a very international sort of community in this one particular dorm, including some Germans, but a lot of people from just different places. Like, what do we do for Thanksgiving? So, and Thanksgiving, like let's all just put this out there. It's like kind of a fucked up holiday in in a lot of ways. But forget the whole like phony pilgrim narrative. Like, yeah, let's not do that. Okay, let's remember the genocide and everything. But the idea of just like being thankful for the harvest is a very ancient idea, and it's perfectly secular idea, or it can be. It doesn't have to be a religious idea, and just taking some time to pause and make a great meal and enjoy it with people that you like, hopefully, or your family, I mean, I do like a lot of people in my family, but I've changed politically and in terms of my beliefs quite a bit from. But anyway, I have a lot of great relatives, so if in case any of them listen to this, but I mean, there's families have family issues, but nevertheless, like to just kind of get together and enjoy a big holiday meal is just a lovely thing. And at least it has this going for it, that in America that it's kind of tied to our civil religion the way most people do it, but it's not tied so explicitly to religion. Christians may Christianize Thanksgiving, but it's not a Christian holiday per se.
Right.
It's not like Christmas, like where its whole history is definitely, well, it was honestly its whole history is pagan, and then the church took it over. But since then it's a Christian thing, which other people may celebrate in a secular way, but it still has that baggage that comes with it. Thanksgiving has a different kind of baggage, I suppose.
Right.
But it can, I think, be easily made into just a lovely secular holiday. And so, I started learning how to cook turkeys back then. And then in grad school, also not being able to go back to Indiana from California for Thanksgiving, I volunteered to do the turkey. And so a few years after, maybe like 5 or 6, I'm not 100% sure, that I did that first Thanksgiving turkey, which was kind of dry and I think not amazing, to be honest, but it was fine. It was okay. I started getting into brining. And so over a few Thanksgivings, I developed this method of brining a turkey that imbues a lot of great flavor and moisture, where it's, 4 parts apple juice to 2 parts brandy. And so you just put that into like, as big a pot as you need for whatever size turkey you're using. And you boil it, you put it onto like a kind of a low rolling boil, and just dump tons and tons of salt in it and super saturate the solution, right? So keep stirring. adding salt. And the old school technique for, telling when you're done is when does an egg float in this solution. So you super saturate your solution with salt. That's how you get your brine. Let it cool a little bit. Throw in some rosemary sprigs and some black pepper or peppercorns. And, this is what I do for brine. You can pick up lots of like brining recipes and things, or like pre-mixed like seasoning packets, I guess, in stores around Thanksgiving, but you can do it yourself. And I really kind of like the sort of like sweet and tart and savory combination. And so over time, I also then adapted the kind of basic Midwestern stuffing recipe that I grew up with to make it fit more the flavor profile that I was going for with the brine. So a basic Midwestern stuffing, it tends to be bread based. In New England, I've never actually really even experienced this, but I hear that it's commonly sausage based if you're going to stuff your turkey. But in the Midwest, it's you take bread. So you break up this bread into like decent sized chunks, and you tend to throw in some celery and some onions and some rosemary, sage, and thyme, and maybe chicken broth, and that is typically what you do. You do moisten it a little bit when you put it in there, so it doesn't suck all the moisture out of the turkey while it cooks. But I thought, well, we can make this more interesting. Like that's fine. This is basically what stovetop stuffing. Speaking of like, 80s box food. Yeah. Oh, your mom's making stovetop too? Okay, I'm having dinner twice. But this is basically what stovetop stuffing tastes like. But you can take this and play with it and make it something that really pops. So what I do, I dump the sage and actually the thyme too. I just use rosemary, but then I put dried apricots in the stuffing and pecans, and then lightly sauteed Granny Smith apples with you saute them in butter and brown sugar, and then you mix them with your bread and onion and celery mix, and to moisten, I do use a little chicken broth, but I also use in the right proportions. You again, based on how large your turkey is and how much stuffing you're putting in there, you figure out what is the level of liquid that you're supposed to moisten the stuffing with. But I also use some apple juice and brandy to moisten it, so you just get all these flavors coming together. And I like rosemary with those things. I wouldn't like sage and thyme so much with those things. And so now you have this bread stuffing that is kind of sweet and tangy and matches the flavor of the brine that goes with the turkey. So yeah, that's what I do.
That sounds awesome.
Thanks.
That sounds rad. Oh my gosh.
It is one of the recipes that I've done like so many times now that I don't really mess with the recipe anymore. Like this is my recipe.
Like it ain't broke, don't gotta fix it. That sort of thing. Oh my gosh. Oh, that sounds really, really good. What have you, do you usually just do the turkey and the stuffing, or do you like if say you're having like a gathering, for like a Thanksgiving sort of?
Yeah. Well, if you're having like a secular gathering with friends, a lot of times it's kind of like a potluck, right? And so some people are doing other things. But if I'm going to make the whole meal, then it's easy enough to make a few other Thanksgiving things. Mashed potatoes are super simple to make, and the real ones, like not the flake ones.
Yeah.
There's real mashed potatoes are still just very easy to make. So I'd throw that together, and probably some green beans, but just like real basic.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't know. I like sweet potato casserole. That is something that I have never made myself, but I don't think it can be that hard to make.
Yeah, there's, like I was saying earlier, there's so much stuff that seems, when you sit down and you eat it, it's like, oh my God, this is really good. This must be really, really difficult to make. And
it's not always. It's not always.
Yeah, like it's bound to be something that is relatively simple. And I can honestly say, like, this makes me feel a lot better about, being I'm not an awful cook. I just don't really cook much.
And I mean, for someone to say I'm an awful cook is kind of like saying I'm bad at math. Like, did you ever actually, believe you could do it and then just take steps to acquire the skill?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, the cranberry sauce, of course, also goes very well with this particular flavor profile that I go for with the turkey and the stuffing. I've also never made my own cranberry sauce, though. Like, someone else has always contributed that, or I've eaten it out of the can. But again, I don't think it's too hard. Maybe I'll make my own cranberry sauce this year.
Yeah. I just realized, I don't think we did anything for Thanksgiving last year because Nathaniel was working for, he works for Samsung and he works in a Best Buy, so he had to do like all the like working Thanksgiving evening and Black Friday sort of thing. But the year before, we went to my dad's cousin's house. So like I've got a bunch of extended family on especially on my dad's side that I connected with fairly recently, and we got Nathaniel one of those tofurkey things.
I've never tried it, to be honest.
He loved it. So I'm not gonna like talk any shit about the tofurkey because he really, really loved it and it served its purpose. And after we took it home, the dogs really, really loved eating, the leftovers of it and everything. But yeah, like that's just all, and I remember, there's the obligatory Thanksgiving stuff that you've always got. It's, the mashed potatoes and the green beans and cranberry sauce and, the...
Yeah. Oh, I forgot gravy, which, I mean, I will make gravy from the drippings. That's also just not hard. So I just didn't kind of mention it, but yeah.
Yeah. That's sort of a given though. Like that's sort of like, it accompanies all of it. So it's great. Oh my God. Now I'm kind of excited about like all of this stuff today. I don't think I had anything else to do today, so I'm very.
Please report back and let me know how your excursion into cooking goes.
Yes, I'm very excited.
And again, I'm just a hobbyist. Like I'm far from a master chef, but it doesn't take a whole lot of work to just learn how to do it well on a hobbyist level.
Yeah. So my friend Mama Atheist actually does have one question. Have you ever added a few squares of white chocolate to mashed potatoes?
I have not, but I'm curious now.
Yeah, I'm curious too. She says it's very good. So
I'd give it a try.
Yeah, I'm very curious now. Now I wanna try that too. Because, even though I'm diabetic, I still have way too much of a sweet tooth. So, it's all good. It's all good. Okay, so if anybody has any other questions or anything, just feel free to drop them in the chat. We are coming up on that hour. So this has been like, I think this has been my favorite conversation so far.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I really, really love it. I did leave links to your Twitter, to your website, and to where people can buy your book. So, and I feel really, really terrible because I cannot remember who you wrote it with.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so Lauren O'Neill and I are co-editors of Empty the Pews, Stories of Leaving the Church. Yeah, she's been a friend of mine since I was at Stanford, and I met her when she was an undergraduate working at the library, and I was like a new grad student, and we've just been friends since that time and kind of talked about doing a project like Empty the Pews from around 2012, and we finally actually did it. It's one of those rare we shoulds that actually turns into something.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome. So if anybody wants to support you with purchasing that, there is a link in the description below. I try not to do Amazon links, so it is sort of more direct way to get that.
Yeah. Oh, Lauren and I are all for, buying it from your favorite indie bookseller.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's awesome. I love it. I love it so much. And what I can do, I'm also, if you would do me a big favor and send me a link to your Patreon, if you can send that to me on Twitter, I can update the description as well so
Oh
people can.
yeah, thank you so much. I can drop that in the chat right now.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have anything sort of coming up that you want to promote, that you want to sort of shill?
Oh yeah, sure. So Empty the Pews: Stories of Leaving the Church focused on well, it's a collection of personal essays by former conservative Christians. Just kind of, they're ambiguous, they're ambivalent, they're personal essays, right? I don't think we need another bunch of new atheist books, to be honest. That territory has been trod. Anyway, trod. But so we have ex-Catholics, ex-evangelicals, ex-Mormons in there, and we wanted to create kind of emotional connection with the reader because we really believe in the power of stories. And we wanted to also kind of create a composite sort of portrait of this big generational shift that is happening as more and more Americans leave Christianity and America becomes more and more secular in terms of the population, which is disproportionately happening among young people. In the introduction to Empty the Pews, we linked all of this to politics and the Christian rights culture wars, which are a driver of secularization in America, and the rise of Donald Trump. Now we're working toward a follow-up volume that we don't have an actual working title for yet, other than Empty the Pews 2, which it probably won't be called. I really want to call it Into the Emptyverse, but I'm sure we're not going to call it that.
Like the Q&A or something.
But we want to expand the ex-fundamentalist conversation. And so we have a call for submissions out now. And what we mean by expand it is we want to go to like even sort of more marginalized faith traditions, or some things that people would call cults, or stuff that's really just kind of more out on the margins, as well as beyond Christianity, or things that are derived from Christianity. So we're hoping to have, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Amish, maybe even ex-fundamentalist LDS. If we can find people who are able to write essays of high literary quality who want to contribute to something like this and want to speak out, and also ex-ultra-Orthodox Jewish, ex-hardline Muslim. And so I'm going to drop the link for the call for submissions in the chat here as well. I'd love for any help from anyone just circulating this link so that hopefully we can get a very diverse sort of, collection of essays to then go through and curate. And, we will have to reject some. So, I mean, I hope there's nobody out there that would think like, oh, if I submit something, it's automatically going to be accepted. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But the selection criteria are, first and foremost, literary quality. But I guess, equally true is diversity of perspectives that we want to bring to this across various axes. I mean, including all the ones you would think of, like sex and gender and race and ethnicity, but also, background that the person comes from. And so this has to be something that we curate. And because ex-evangelical and ex-Catholic was so heavily emphasized in the original Empty the Pews, the book that will not be known as Into the Emptyverse is going to have fewer of those essays. It doesn't mean we won't have any, and if you come from any religious background and you have an interest in this, I mean, drop us a line at emptythepews2@gmail.com, or just submit a pitch or an essay. I mean, we want this to be broad, but probably more for the context of it, the way that we would frame it this time, instead of talking about so much about electoral politics and the ways that these things are interrelated. I think we want to talk more about the issues that growing up with some kind of high control religion or fundamentalism has on people, and to focus on issues like children's rights. And so I think we'll be focusing on things like the problems that are caused by lack of education among people who are raised fundamentalist. And in fact, there is no federal right to an education for children in the United States. We'll focus on, difficulties with relationships and sexuality that come from being raised in such a harsh environment. These are the kinds of themes that I think we really want to bring out. And obviously these have a lot to do with politics, but they're sort of broader than like, well, look, the Christian right took over the Republican Party, and now people are leaving Christianity. Like it's a kind of different emphasis, and that's all of that is what we mean by expand the ex-fundamentalist conversation. Lauren and I also are not anti-theists. We're not anti-religious, and we think that it would be better for the atheist community to kind of get over some of that stuff, to be quite honest, because if we want to have a functional democracy at some point in America, we have to build coalitions with progressive believers of different religions and traditions who share our values. And to me, shared values is so much more important than shared beliefs. And pluralism is just, something that you're going to have in democracy. So, so both these books are kind of targeted. They focus on issues caused by conservative religion, authoritarian religion. They don't talk about religion as one big thing, which is not even really a thing. I mean, it's
right. Yeah.
So we're not here for the point scoring talking points. This isn't about that.
Yeah. And I can definitely say I'm very, very excited. Is it also available like in an ebook version too?
Oh, well, yeah, it will be. We're working with the same publisher, and Empty the Pews is available on Kindle. And I think you can also get it on Apple Books. So this would be the same. And this time too, so we did have one issue with Empty the Pews where we ended up not being able to make an Audible edition. And we had so many people ask, like, is there going to be an Audible? When is there going to be an Audible? Well, we had some reprints in there to which we did not secure the audio rights. Whoops. So we're not going to let that happen this time. There may or may not be any reprinted material. Empty the Pews is mostly original content, but not entirely original content. But we're going to make sure that we secure the audio rights to everything. So, because I know audiobooks are so popular these days for very understandable reasons, and we'll try to accommodate that this time.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm very, very excited for that. That's going to be really awesome. I'll be sure to update a description with both of the links that you have provided to me. So I will get that all updated and everything.
Thank you, Susan. And hey, Lauren, if you're listening, can we please call it Into the Emptyverse?
I'm going to start a petition to call it. It's like retweet if you're in support. That's awesome. I really, really love it. But yeah, so thank you so much, Chrissy. I really, really appreciate you joining me. This has been an awesome, awesome, wonderful time. It was a great, great conversation.
Thank you,
really,
Susan.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, I loved it. Had a great time. It's been great.
Thank you. And thank everybody for watching. If you're watching in the future, I hope the future is better than it currently is right now. And thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we will see y'all next time.
Take care.
Bye, y'all.